You know her as Hollywood's ultimate love goddess, and the bombshell who made grown men weak in the knees during World War II. But Rita Hayworth's real story is far stranger than any movie script. From atomic bombs bearing her image to mysterious cabin discoveries in remote Canadian wilderness, and shocking on-set accidents that left co-stars missing teeth, the woman behind the glamorous facade harbored secrets that would make even her steamiest films seem tame. Here are 15 things you never knew about Rita Hayworth. Fact 1. Atomic bomb pin. Outrage. Rita Hayworth's image had become so iconic by 1946 that American servicemen plastered her photos everywhere they went during World War II. But one particular use of her picture sent the Hollywood star into an absolute fury that shocked everyone around her. When the United States military was preparing to conduct atomic bomb tests at Bikini Atoll in the Marshall Islands of the Pacific Ocean, someone in the flight crew decided to tape Rita's glamorous pinup photo directly onto the side of one of the bombs scheduled for detonation. This wasn't just any random photo either. It was her famous image from Esquire magazine, the one that had made her the second most popular pinup girl of the entire war, right behind Betty Grable. The military personnel probably thought they were paying Rita the ultimate compliment by choosing her picture to adorn what they considered their most powerful weapon, but Rita saw it completely differently when she found out about it. Her husband at the time, the brilliant filmmaker Orson Welles, later described Rita's reaction to biographer Barbara Leeming in terms that revealed just how deeply the incident affected her. According to Welles, Rita used to fly into terrible rages all the time, but the angriest he had ever seen her was when she discovered that they had put her photograph on the atomic bomb. He said she almost went insane with fury over the whole situation. Rita was so outraged that she wanted to travel all the way to Washington, D.C. to hold a press conference and publicly denounce what the military had done with her image. She felt that using her picture on a weapon of mass destruction was deeply offensive and completely inappropriate, but her controlling studio boss, Harry Cohn, refused to let her speak out about it. Cohn told her that criticizing the military's actions would be considered unpatriotic, especially so soon after the war had ended. Welles tried to convince Rita that the whole thing wasn't some publicity stunt orchestrated by her studio, and that it was simply the flight crew's way of showing their admiration for her, but Rita remained furious about the entire incident for a very long time. Fact 2. 3 years of painful electrolysis. Rita Hayworth's transformation from her birth name Margarita Carmen Cancino into Hollywood's ultimate love goddess required one of the most extreme and painful beauty procedures ever undertaken by a major movie star. When Rita first arrived in Hollywood during the 1930s, studio executives at Columbia Pictures told her that her natural ethnic appearance would limit her to playing only exotic foreign roles, which were far fewer in number than leading lady parts. The biggest problem, according to studio head Harry Cohn and Rita's first husband Edward Judson, was her distinctly Latina hairline that sat low on her forehead, giving her what they considered a narrow and ethnic appearance that wouldn't appeal to mainstream American audiences. To fix this perceived problem, Rita agreed to undergo a grueling series of electrolysis treatments that would permanently remove hair from her hairline and raise it by nearly a full inch. The electrolysis process involved using a thin metal probe to deliver electric shocks directly into each individual hair follicle, permanently destroying the root so the hair would never grow back. Rita had to endure these excruciating weekly sessions for 2 to 3 years straight, with each appointment lasting several hours as technicians worked their way across her hairline one hair at a time. A 1942 article in American Magazine described the complete transformation process in detail, explaining how Rita's hairline was moved back at the top and on the sides until nearly an inch more of her forehead was exposed, completely changing the shape and proportions of her face. The article noted that at first her hair was so tough it could hardly be bent by a hairdresser, so she had to spend 2 evenings every week getting her hair bleached and colored, plus daily sessions where her scalp was rubbed with heavy oils, steamed, shampooed, and brushed dry. By 1939, Rita's painful transformation was finally complete, and the woman who emerged looked so different from the original Margarita Cancino that she had essentially become an entirely new person with a face that Hollywood considered perfectly American. Fact 3. Mysterious Canadian wilderness discovery. One of the strangest discoveries involving Rita Hayworth happened in 1946 when an expedition team ventured into one of Canada's most remote and unexplored regions known as Headless Valley, located deep in the wilderness of the Northwest Territories. This area was famous for being completely cut off from civilization. where trappers and prospectors would disappear for months or even years at a time, often never to be seen again. During their exploration of this harsh and isolated landscape, the expedition members came across a small, abandoned trapper's shack that appeared to have been deserted for quite some time. The cabin was tucked away in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by dense forest and mountains, miles away from the nearest settlement or trading post. When the explorers decided to investigate the inside of the shack, they discovered something completely unexpected. The entire cabin had been stripped bare except for exactly 3 items that the previous occupant had left behind: a single candle, 1 can of beans, and a photograph of Rita Hayworth. There were no personal belongings, no tools, no furniture, no clothing, and no clues about who had been living there or what had happened to them. The fact that someone had chosen to keep Rita's picture as one of only 3 possessions in such a remote location spoke to just how far her fame had spread, even reaching into the most isolated corners of the North American wilderness. The discovery became part of Rita Hayworth folklore, showing that her image had somehow made its way into places where most people would never expect to find traces of Hollywood glamour. The unknown trapper had apparently considered Rita's photograph important enough to keep alongside the most basic survival necessities, suggesting that even in the harshest and loneliest conditions imaginable, her picture provided some kind of comfort or connection to the outside world. The identity of the trapper and what happened to them remained a complete mystery that was never solved. Fact 4. Knocked out Glenn Ford's teeth. Rita Hayworth's most famous film role in Gilda, from 1946, paired her with leading man Glenn Ford in what would become one of cinema's most iconic film noir classics, but the on-set chemistry between the 2 stars got a little too intense during one particular scene. The movie featured several dramatic confrontations between Rita's character Gilda and Ford's character Johnny, including physical altercations that required the actors to choreograph their movements carefully to make the fights look realistic without actually hurting each other. During the filming of one of these heated fight scenes, something went wrong with the carefully planned choreography, and Rita ended up delivering a much harder blow than anyone had intended. The impact was so forceful that it actually knocked out 2 of Glenn Ford's teeth, turning what was supposed to be a staged movie fight into a real dental emergency right there on the Columbia Pictures soundstage. This accident happened despite the fact that Hollywood fight scenes were typically rehearsed multiple times with stunt coordinators to ensure the safety of the actors involved. The irony was that Rita, who was known for her graceful dancing and carefully controlled movements in her musical numbers, had somehow lost control during this particular moment and delivered a genuine knockout punch to one of her most frequent co-stars. Glenn Ford was a professional about the whole incident and didn't let the accident affect their working relationship, since he and Rita would go on to appear together in 4 more films over the years, including The Lady in Question, The Loves of Carmen, Affair in Trinidad, and The Money Trap. Ford and Rita also maintained a close personal friendship that lasted for decades, with Ford remaining one of her most loyal supporters throughout her later struggles with Alzheimer's disease. The dental accident became part of Hollywood legend and showed that even the most glamorous movie stars could have unexpectedly dangerous moments during what seemed like routine filming, proving that Rita packed more of a punch than her elegant image might have suggested. Fact 5. First movie star princess. Most people automatically think of Grace Kelly when they hear about Hollywood actresses who became real princesses, but Rita Hayworth actually beat her to that distinction by several years when she married into genuine royalty in 1949. At the height of her fame, Rita met Prince Ali Khan, who was the playboy son of Sultan Muhammad Shah, also known as Aga Khan III, the leader of the Ismaili sect of Shia Islam and one of the wealthiest men in the world. Prince Ali Khan was famous throughout Europe and beyond for his lavish lifestyle, his passion for horse racing, and his reputation as one of the most eligible bachelors on the international social scene. When he and Rita began their whirlwind romance in 1948, it created a media sensation that captivated audiences around the globe, combining Hollywood glamour with genuine aristocratic power and wealth. The couple married on May 27, 1949, in a ceremony that was covered by newspapers and magazines worldwide, making Rita an actual princess with a legitimate royal title. This marriage meant that Rita temporarily retired from Hollywood at the absolute peak of her career, breaking her contract with Columbia Pictures to sail away to France and live as European royalty. During their marriage, Rita gave birth to a daughter named Princess Yasmin Aga Khan, who inherited her own royal title and would later become famous in her own right as an advocate for Alzheimer's research. The marriage to Prince Ali Khan was short-lived and ended in a bitter divorce in 1953, partly due to his well-known infidelities and their completely different lifestyles. When Grace Kelly married Prince Rainier of Monaco in 1956, she received much more publicity and is often remembered as the first actress turned princess, but Rita had already achieved that milestone 7 years earlier. Rita's brief time as genuine royalty remains one of the most fascinating chapters in her extraordinary life, proving that her appeal extended far beyond Hollywood's borders into the highest levels of international society. Fact 6. Harry Cohn's bug dressing rooms. Rita Hayworth's relationship with Columbia Pictures studio head Harry Cohn was one of the most disturbing examples of workplace harassment in Hollywood history, involving surveillance tactics and abuse of power that would shock audiences even by today's standards. Cohn, who discovered Rita when she was still known as Rita Cancino in 1936 and helped transform her into a major star, used his position to subject her to decades of relentless sexual harassment and psychological intimidation. According to multiple sources and Rita's own testimony, Cohn repeatedly demanded that she sleep with him throughout their professional relationship, making these requests both privately and in front of other people at the studio. When Rita consistently refused his advances, Cohn would retaliate by imposing financial penalties on her, finding ways to dock her pay or delay her projects as punishment for not giving in to his demands. Perhaps most disturbing was Cohn's decision to have Rita's dressing rooms secretly bugged with listening devices so he could monitor her private conversations and activities. This surveillance was particularly intense during the filming of The Loves of Carmen. In 1948, when tensions between Rita and Cohn had reached a breaking point due to her growing independence and her relationship with Orson Welles, Rita finally spoke publicly about Cohn's behavior in a 1970 interview with the New York Times, where she directly addressed his harassment by saying that in front of people, Harry Cohn would claim he never put a hand on her, adding, "Of course he hadn't put a hand on me, as if I'd let him." This statement revealed both the ongoing nature of his inappropriate behavior and Rita's determination to resist his advances despite the professional consequences. Cohn's treatment of Rita represents one of the most documented cases of systematic harassment by a studio executive during Hollywood's golden age, showing how much power these men wielded over the careers and personal lives of even the biggest stars in the industry. Fact 7. Ginger Rogers was her cousin. Rita Hayworth's incredible dancing abilities and natural grace weren't just products of intensive training and hard work, but were actually part of a remarkable family legacy that connected her directly to one of Hollywood's most celebrated dancers. Through her mother's side of the family, Rita was the first cousin of Ginger Rogers, the legendary performer who became famous as Fred Astaire's most frequent dancing partner in classic films like Top Hat, Swing Time, and Shall We Dance? The family connection came through Rita's mother, Volga Hayworth, who was a former Ziegfeld Follies showgirl before she married Rita's father, the Spanish dancer Eduardo Cancino. Volga was related to the Hayworth family, which had deep roots in the entertainment industry and included several performers who made their mark in vaudeville, theater, and early Hollywood productions. Rita was also the niece of actor Vinton Hayworth, who had his own successful career in films and theater during the early decades of Hollywood. Vinton appeared in numerous productions and was well known within the industry, making the Hayworth name familiar to casting directors and producers long before Rita achieved her own stardom. This family connection helps explain why both Rita and Ginger Rogers possessed such exceptional natural rhythm and stage presence, since they inherited their talents from the same gene pool of performers and entertainers. The fact that both women became major Hollywood stars specializing in dance and musical numbers wasn't just a coincidence, but rather the result of shared family traits that made them both perfectly suited for careers in entertainment. Interestingly, both cousins ended up dancing with Fred Astaire in major Hollywood productions, with Ginger Rogers becoming his most famous partner, while Rita appeared with him in You'll Never Get Rich and You Were Never Lovelier. Astaire later admitted that Rita was actually his favorite dancing partner, despite his legendary partnership with Ginger Rogers, showing that exceptional talent clearly ran in the family and that both cousins had inherited the same natural gifts for movement and performance. Fact 8. Named daughter after classic literature. Rita Hayworth's marriage to the brilliant filmmaker and intellectual Orson Welles had a profound impact on her personal interests and reading habits, transforming her from someone who had been pulled out of school at age 13 into a woman who developed a genuine appreciation for classic literature. Welles, who was famous for his sophisticated artistic sensibilities and deep knowledge of literature, theater, and history, encouraged Rita to expand her intellectual horizons by introducing her to books and authors she had never encountered during her limited formal education. During her pregnancy in 1944, Rita became completely absorbed in reading Walter Scott's classic historical novel Ivanhoe, which tells the story of medieval England and features a beautiful and intelligent Jewish woman named Rebecca as one of its central characters. Rebecca is portrayed in the novel as a strong, compassionate, and dignified heroine who faces numerous challenges with grace and courage, making her one of literature's most memorable female characters. Rita was so impressed and moved by this literary heroine that when she gave birth to her first child on December 17, 1944, she decided to name her daughter Rebecca Wells in honor of the fictional character who had captured her imagination. The birth took place at St. John's Hospital in Santa Monica, California, which was specifically chosen because it was known for providing privacy to celebrity patients. This decision to name her daughter after a literary character shows how much Rita's intellectual development had progressed under Wells's influence and how seriously she had begun to take her own education and cultural growth. The name choice also reflected Rita's desire to give her daughter a strong, meaningful identity that was connected to literature and culture rather than just Hollywood glamour. Rita's production company, which she formed later to gain more control over her career, was called the Beckworth Corporation, combining her daughter's name Rebecca with Rita's own professional surname, showing how important this child and the literary connection remained to her throughout her life. Fact 9. Dinah Shore's limousine best friend. Rita Hayworth's closest personal friendship in Hollywood was with the popular singer and television star Dinah Shore, a relationship that was revealed through intimate details shared by Rita's longtime cook and household staff member, Dorothy Holmes. According to Holmes, who had an inside view of Rita's private life and daily routines, Dinah Shore was not just a casual acquaintance or professional colleague, but genuinely Rita's best friend and most trusted companion during her years as a major star. The friendship between these two entertainment icons was characterized by a level of luxury and care that reflected both women's status in Hollywood's elite social circles. Dinah Shore would regularly send her personal limousine to Rita's house to pick her up for their social outings, ensuring that Rita could travel in comfort and style without having to worry about driving herself or dealing with the logistics of getting around Los Angeles. Their favorite activities together involved spending time at exclusive private clubs, where they would play golf and share drinks, while enjoying each other's company away from the pressures and scrutiny of their public lives. Dorothy Holmes specifically mentioned that she loved Dinah Shore because she had such a lovely disposition, suggesting that Shore's warm and genuine personality made her a perfect companion for Rita, who often struggled with the more superficial aspects of Hollywood's social life. These regular outings to Dinah's personal racket club and golf club provided Rita with a rare opportunity to relax and be herself with someone who understood the unique challenges of being a female entertainer in the demanding world of show business. The fact that Dinah would go to the trouble of sending her own limousine shows the depth of their friendship and the special care that Shore took to maintain their relationship. This friendship represents one of the few genuinely positive and supportive relationships in Rita's often troubled personal life, offering her a refuge from the chaos and difficulties that plagued many of her romantic relationships and professional dealings. Fact 10. Childhood sexual abuse by father. The darkest secret of Rita Hayworth's early life was revealed years later when she confided to her second husband, Orson Welles, about the sexual abuse she suffered at the hands of her own father during their touring years as the Dancing Cansinos. When Rita was 13 years old, her father, Eduardo Cansino, pulled her out of school to revive the family's vaudeville act, taking his teenage daughter on the road as his dance partner while attempting to make her appear older than her actual age. During these touring years in the early 1930s, Eduardo began sexually abusing Rita while they traveled from city to city performing in nightclubs and theaters across the United States and Mexico. This abuse created a horrific situation where Rita was trapped with her abuser, unable to escape or seek help because she was completely dependent on her father for her livelihood and had no other family members or authorities to turn to for protection. Rita's mother, Volga Hayworth, apparently became aware of what was happening to her daughter and tried to protect her in the only way she could manage under the circumstances. According to the account that Rita later shared with Welles, Her mother began sleeping in the same bed as Rita during their travels, using her physical presence as a barrier to try to prevent Eduardo from continuing his abuse. This traumatic experience had lasting effects on Rita's ability to form healthy relationships throughout her adult life, contributing to her pattern of marrying controlling older men and struggling with trust issues that plagued all 5 of her marriages. The abuse also helps explain Rita's later comment that she hated being Rita Hayworth, since her entire career was built on the foundation of the dancing skills that were developed during this period of trauma and exploitation. Orson Welles shared this information with biographer Barbara Leeming during interviews for her book about Rita, helping to provide context for understanding the psychological struggles that Rita faced throughout her life and career. Fact 11. The Margarita Cocktail Connection. One of the most intriguing legends surrounding Rita Hayworth claims that the world-famous Margarita cocktail was actually named after her during her early performing years, when she was still dancing under her birth name of Margarita Cancino in the nightclubs of Tijuana, Mexico. This story connects Rita's pre-Hollywood career to one of the most popular drinks in the world, creating a fascinating link between her personal history and cocktail culture. During the 1930s, before Rita became a major movie star, she was performing with her father Eduardo Cancino as part of their family dancing act called the Dancing Cancinos. They regularly appeared at various nightclubs and entertainment venues along the Mexican border, including several popular establishments in Tijuana that catered to American tourists looking for nightlife and entertainment that wasn't available during Prohibition in the United States. According to the legend, Rita's captivating dance performances and striking beauty made such an impression on the patrons and staff at these Tijuana nightclubs that a bartender decided to create a special cocktail in her honor, naming the tequila-based drink after her given name of Margarita. The timing of this story makes sense historically, since it would have occurred during the period when creative bartenders were experimenting with new cocktail recipes and when Rita was performing regularly in the border region. While there are several competing stories about the true origin of the Margarita cocktail, with different bartenders and locations claiming credit for its invention, the Rita Hayworth connection has persisted as one of the most romantic and appealing explanations for how this iconic drink got its name. The fact that Rita was performing under her birth name of Margarita during exactly the time period and geographic location where the cocktail was supposedly invented adds credibility to this particular origin story. Whether or not this legend is completely accurate, it represents another example of how Rita's influence and appeal extended far beyond the movie screen into popular culture. Fact 12. Early Alzheimer's misdiagnosed as alcoholism. Rita Hayworth became one of the earliest documented cases of early-onset Alzheimer's disease in a public figure, but the tragic reality is that her condition went unrecognized and misdiagnosed for nearly 2 decades, because so little was understood about this devastating brain disorder during the 1960s and 70s. Rita began showing the first signs of memory problems and cognitive decline around 1960, when she was only 42 years old, which was considered extremely unusual since most people don't develop Alzheimer's symptoms until they reach their mid-60s or later. The earliest symptoms appeared when Rita started having difficulty remembering her lines during film shoots and stage performances, including her 1971 Broadway appearance in Applause and her final movie The Wrath of God in 1972. However, because Alzheimer's disease was still largely unknown to the general public, and even to many medical professionals at that time, Rita's erratic behavior and memory lapses were automatically attributed to alcoholism and emotional instability. This misdiagnosis was particularly damaging because it meant that Rita was blamed for problems that were actually caused by a degenerative brain disease completely beyond her control. Friends, colleagues, and even family members assumed that her increasing confusion and unpredictable behavior were the result of drinking too much or having emotional breakdowns, when in reality her brain was being progressively destroyed by Alzheimer's. The correct diagnosis finally came in 1980, when Rita was 62 years old and had been suffering from the disease for approximately 20 years. By that time, her condition had advanced to the point where she could no longer care for herself and needed to be placed under the guardianship of her daughter, Princess Yasmin Aga Khan. Rita's case helped bring much-needed attention to Alzheimer's disease and contributed to increased research funding and public awareness, making her one of the first celebrities to put a human face on this previously obscure medical condition. Fact 13. Charlton Heston's most embarrassing dinner. Charlton Heston witnessed one of the most disturbing examples of domestic abuse in Hollywood history during what was supposed to be a pleasant dinner party in Spain, involving Rita Hayworth and her fifth husband, film producer James Hill. The incident occurred while Rita was filming The Happy Thieves with Rex Harrison, and Heston was invited to join the couple for dinner at a restaurant along with his wife Lydia, director George Marshall, and Harrison himself. What started as a normal evening among Hollywood colleagues quickly turned into a nightmare when James Hill began verbally attacking Rita in front of all the dinner guests, subjecting her to what Heston later described as obscene abuse that continued relentlessly throughout the meal. Hill's tirade was so vicious and sustained that Rita was eventually reduced to a helpless flood of tears, burying her face in her hands while her husband continued his cruel verbal assault without any regard for the other people at the table. Heston wrote in his memoir that the entire dinner party sat stunned as they witnessed what he called a marital massacre, with everyone at the table unable to believe what they were seeing but uncertain about how to intervene in such a deeply personal and uncomfortable situation. The legendary actor, who was known for playing heroic characters who stood up for what was right, admitted that he was strongly tempted to physically confront Hill and defend Rita from the abuse. However, instead of taking action, Heston simply took his wife Lydia home when she stood up from the table, almost in tears herself from witnessing Rita's humiliation. Years later, Heston expressed deep regret about his decision to walk away from the situation, writing that he was ashamed of himself for not defending Rita when she clearly needed someone to stand up for her. The actor never saw Rita again after that terrible evening, and he carried the guilt of his inaction for the rest of his life, calling it the single most embarrassing evening he had ever experienced. Fact 14. Lines shot one at a time. Rita Hayworth's final film appearance in The Wrath of God from 1972 became a heartbreaking demonstration of how severely early-onset Alzheimer's disease had already damaged her once brilliant mind, forcing the production team to completely change their normal filming methods to accommodate her declining cognitive abilities. At 54 years old, Rita was still relatively young by Hollywood standards and desperately needed the money from the film, but her memory problems had become so severe that she could no longer remember even simple dialogue or follow basic scene directions. The situation became apparent immediately when filming began, as Rita found herself completely unable to memorize her lines or retain them long enough to perform even short scenes in the traditional manner. This created an enormous challenge for the director and crew, who had to develop an entirely new approach to capture Rita's performance without overwhelming her failing memory or causing her additional stress and confusion. The solution they devised was both innovative and deeply sad. Instead of filming complete scenes with multiple lines of dialogue, the crew had to break down every single one of Rita's scenes into individual lines, shooting each sentence separately and then editing them together later to create the illusion of continuous performance. This painstaking process meant that Rita would be given just one line at a time to remember and deliver, which was about the maximum amount of dialogue her damaged brain could handle. Robert Mitchum, who was Rita's co-star in the film, had actually suggested that she take the role because he recognized that she needed the work, but even he was shocked by the extent of her cognitive decline when they began working together. The filming process exposed just how much Rita's condition had deteriorated, making it clear to everyone involved that this would likely be her final screen appearance. The experience was emotionally difficult for the entire cast and crew, who watched one of Hollywood's greatest stars struggle with a disease that was slowly but relentlessly destroying her legendary talent and charisma. Fact 15. Shawshank Redemption poster succession. Rita Hayworth gained an unexpected place in cinema history through her connection to one of the most beloved films ever made, The Shawshank Redemption, from 1994, where her iconic pin-up poster played a crucial role in the movie's central escape plot. The film was actually based on a Stephen King novella originally titled Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption, which directly referenced her importance to the story about prisoners planning their escape from the notorious prison. In the movie, the main character, Andy Dufresne, uses a succession of 3 different pin-up posters to hide the tunnel he's slowly digging through his cell wall over the course of nearly 20 years. Rita's glamorous poster serves as the first cover for his secret escape route during the earliest part of his imprisonment, representing the beginning of his long-term plan to break free from Shawshank State Penitentiary. As the decades pass in the film and Andy continues his patient work on the tunnel, the posters change to reflect the evolution of Hollywood glamour and popular culture over time. Rita's poster is eventually replaced by one featuring Marilyn Monroe, showing how beauty standards and celebrity obsessions shifted during the middle period of Andy's imprisonment, and finally by a poster of Raquel Welch for the last third of the film, representing the more modern era when his escape plan finally comes to fruition. This progression of posters serves multiple purposes in the storytelling, not only marking the passage of time, but also showing how Andy maintains hope and connection to the outside world through images of beautiful women who represent freedom and glamour. Rita's position as the first poster in this sequence gives her a special significance in the film since she represents the beginning of Andy's dream of eventual escape and redemption. The movie even includes a scene where the prisoners watch Rita's classic film Gilda during a prison movie night, further cementing her connection to this beloved story about hope, perseverance, and the power of never giving up on your dreams.